it's Mike Jeffers, Chicago Jazz Magazine, ChicagoJazz.com, and welcome to Talking Jazz. We are here at Johnny O's, Morgan and 35th Street. We are back in our home base, and I am pleased to be joined by the great James Sanders, the incredible violinist, the guy who leads so many groups around town. We can't even talk about all of them, but we're going to talk about Conjunto specifically because you've got a couple of cool shows, and specifically let's talk about the Jazz Institute's 50th birthday bash coming up June 28th through the 30th at the Logan Center for the Performing Arts, and you are going to be playing June 29th with the full band Conjunto.
Yeah, 7-piece band.
At the Logan Center.
At the Logan Center.
Up in the penthouse.
Right.
Man, oh man, oh man. So let's talk a little bit about this. First of all, I like to always tell everybody, are you thoroughly impressed with Johnny O's? I mean, this is like
this is the place, man. I've always wanted to come here. You know, I've been watching these interviews and you know, I feel like I'm on the Jay Leno show or something. This is great.
It's a little bit under construction right now compared to what it normally is, but that's all right. Big things are coming here at Johnny O's, boy. Get ready.
Yeah.
Huge. Wait,
Huge.
Let's not word that.
I saw R2-D2 in the next room.
He's in the next room. I mean, that's how big it is, man.
Big.
They're coming in from space, man.
That's right.
All right, so let's talk a little bit before we get completely off the rails. You and I have known each other for many years.
We can get off the rails.
We can completely get off the rails. We could talk about the first gigs we've had at that
DePaul
the Music Mart downstairs.
Right.
And I remember we would start playing, we'd be downstairs. You'd kick off the thing. I'm playing drums. It's Nick Schneider, sometimes Weitzes. Tom Weitzes. And you would start playing. There'd be like two people there, but it was such a big place. You would start playing, violin through the amp and all that, and people would start looking down like, what is that? What is going on? I have no idea what's going on, but all right, we'll come down. And then by the end, it was like people were dancing and rocking in the audience.
That was
and all
a cool
stuff.
place. Yeah.
That was a very cool place.
Yeah.
Now that's really when you started just kind of getting, because you were classically trained, right? And you were just getting into the improvisation end of the whole thing.
Yeah, I was just getting into the jazz scene and starting to play out. And,
And you hadn't started like Conjunto or anything yet, right?
That was right before I started Conjunto.
Okay.
And then probably like in 97, 98 is when I first started Conjunto.
Yeah.
And I grew up, I'm Hispanic and started playing the Latin music, and it really felt like, oh, okay.
You just felt like that was the groove, that was happening, that was the deal?
Yeah, it's just the stuff I heard in the street growing up, coming through everyone's radios, coming through the streaming in the windows, Because I grew up at Newport and Halsted, and then back then that was a totally Puerto Rican neighborhood, and the salsa would be playing, and it just felt really comfortable, and so... That was.
But you were classically trained, right?
Right. I got my degrees in classical violin, and I still work.
A lot. You still do a lot of classical violin.
Right. I still do that.
But something just drove you to like the Latin jazz and to jazz specific, but also salsa and all that stuff, right?
Right. And then we used to play for years at 26 in Central Park. You're not too far from here.
Oh yeah. Sure.
Yeah, for years at this club called the Jacaranda that Roel Trevino owned. The Conguero.
Yeah.
Right. And we used to play there and had a really good following, probably like 6 or 7 years, like every Friday and then every other Friday, and
so that's how the band got
established.
We started.
That's how we gelled, and Steve Eisen's been with us since the beginning, and Jose Porcayo on the bass, and Don O'Neill was with us back then, and Luis Rosario, who's also going to be on this gig at the a lot of these guys are going to be playing. So it's really cool that we've been together for about 20 years.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
I mean, and you're only 32.
Right. I know. How did that happen?
It's really weird. You started very young. That's really impressive, actually. So what drew you to violin specifically to begin with?
Well, it really wasn't a choice, I mean, my sister was taking cello lessons, and it was a sister that was teaching her, and she came out and saw me sitting in the waiting room with my mom, and she said, "Well, why don't we start him on violin?" And that was it,
But I don't want to play violin.
I don't want to play violin. What are you talking about?
But you took to it right away, obviously.
Well, I think I like performing, and so, and the teacher was she was kind of about to give up on me, but then I had learned the Speed Racer theme on the violin. Because I wasn't practicing the stuff that she
all
wanted
classical
me to.
musicians learn first. Okay.
And so she asked me to play the assignment. I didn't play that, and then my mom says, "Well, why don't you play that piece that you keep playing at home?" And then I played the Speed Racer thing, and she thought, "Well, okay, well this guy has some potential." He did something,
So then you came back with Scooby Doo the next
right,
week. Right. So you started young then.
I was 6 years old.
Yeah, well, I would say that's pretty young. I don't know. Man, oh man.
Well, since I'm 32 now, it's all relative. Right?
I forgot. Yeah, right. So that kind of led you right down into the thing, right? You went right down the wormhole, and then finally somebody talked you into, hey, you know what? You ran out of cartoons. How about listening to what I'm asking you to play and doing this?
Exactly.
So you guys started doing, it was pretty much straight classical stuff.
Yeah, straight
right?
classical study. And then I got my degrees from, I went to Indiana and I went to Yale University, got my master's there, studied with...
In classical performance?
Yeah, classical performance, studied with some big teachers, and... did a variety of festivals, and I've been playing in the Chicago Sinfonietta for 26 years, maybe.
Yeah.
So I've been active doing that, and events, quartet, chamber music, Fulcrum Point New Music Project. I play with them.
Well, and you tell me if I'm wrong, but I remember when I was playing with this cello player years ago that we both know, he would get calls. Right. And you would get a call as a known classical person. Hey, could you guys come and do this thing at the Auditorium Theater and play in the pit?
Right.
Or hey, the Chicago Symphony might need somebody to sub in the Grant Park thing, or even on the main symphony. And once you're a known commodity, and they know that you're able to plug yourself into those freelance
You're
spots,
able to plug. You're able to plug in, and it's kind of a network. I mean, for a long time, I didn't let people know that I was playing jazz because I didn't, I kind of kept that on the down low because I didn't, want them thinking that I wasn't, serious. Maybe that was in my mind or whatever. But it's, I just kind of. But then they asked me to perform solo with an orchestra playing jazz violin, and then the truth came out. And everyone was really cool about it, and they loved it. And
they're cool about it because you can play the other stuff.
Right.
I think that's probably it. If you're kind of hacking through the other stuff and you're playing jazz, it would have been a different vibe, I would imagine.
But when you start looking at the history of jazz violinists, you see that this often is the case. Stéphane Grappelli played in the opera orchestras in Paris. Jean-Luc Ponty was the first prize violinist at the Paris Conservatory. You find that a lot
Johnny
of times...
Frigo played upright bass.
Yeah.
Maybe not him.
Anyway. But Johnny did a lot of stuff with the barn dances, back in the day, the WGN barn dances.
Yep.
And that was just almost like a straight up, country thing, really. So
he could play all the different genres.
Yeah.
But as a classically trained musician, it's a lot like percussion, right? Because when I was in school going for drums, I'm playing drum set, I'm playing marimba. I had to learn all the four mallet stuff. I had to play in all the symphonic winds. I had to play classical snare drum. I had to get my chops together. So, you get your chops together and your reading together with the classical. And then really, I think that the hardest part, especially for somebody who's classically trained specifically, is to get that feel of the jazz feel, right? I would imagine even with the Latin stuff, at least it's straight to a certain point,
yes.
right?
The Latin stuff is more oriented, it's clave based, and it's got a straighter 1-3 kind of, you could almost get away with a really classical attacks on the notes and stuff. But when you're talking playing bebop or swing or anything like that, you really have to adjust what you're doing. You really have to start thinking about it in a different way that goes kind of against the typical classical training on the violin. And that's probably the biggest thing you have to think about as a violinist getting into swinging. Just knowing how to use the bow, how to phrase.
Well, and outside of all of that, and that's really important. I didn't even think of that, but it's different if you're trying to get that feel. But just getting the feel I mean,
Yeah.
you know, like even a classical piano player, they can come in, they can play all these chops
Right.
and stuff, but that feel is just different.
Yeah, the feel is different.
So do you think growing up, where you grew up and around, you know, that style of music, like the Latin style of music and the in that area, you probably had a little bit of a head start with the feel, right?
I think the feel for the Latin stuff kind of came intuitively to a great extent, and you know, then you know, I had to work harder at developing the swinging style, you know, because that required some thought as far as, you know, how to approach using the bowing and phrasing. You know, because whereas when you're playing a wind instrument, you know, you can inflect and lean on certain parts and measure with your breath and so forth like that. You release at certain points or what have you. You know, you could just think it, and you know, you can do it in a different way. With the string, playing a string player, you actually have to, you know, move the bow and release the sound with the bow. So, you know, so you got to practice your scales or whatever with different bowing articulation than you might if you were just playing straight classical.
Right.
You know.
Right. And that takes a long time to kind of figure out.
To figure that out. And I would approach sometimes people that I would see that were improvising violinists, and you know, and they were like, well, I don't know, I just do what I do intuitively.
Sure.
They weren't a lot of help, you know. So I studied with trumpet players. I studied with Brad Good when he was in Chicago.
Sure, yeah.
I studied with really anyone that would teach me. You know, I'd go over to Nick Schneider's house, talk to him, you know, about stuff like that, and just picked up on stuff. Have conversations. Oh yeah, you know, Charlie Parker played 4-bar phrases a lot. Oh, a 4-bar phrase. How about that? You know.
Well, yeah, and you don't even think about that.
You don't even think about that because, you know, because you don't have to stop and breathe when you're playing the violin. You know, you could just keep going and going, and then it's like, you know. So you have to realize that the music kind of evolved from a horn standpoint in a lot of ways. You know, it didn't evolve. You know, it evolved it from a breathing standpoint. You know, and then you have to think about how to apply that to playing a string instrument.
Yeah.
You know,
that makes a ton of sense.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it really does.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and from a string standpoint, there really are not a lot, as you said, of people just to watch.
Right.
From a violin standpoint,
Right.
It's not like a drummer or something where you can sit down and copy a bunch of licks and figure everything out. I mean, you know, so yeah, that's pretty interesting.
You're going to find a few, and they're very, very different. You know, like, you know, you're going to have a Frigo. You're going to have a Stuff Smith probably was the one that really kind of had the swing style more like a horn player. You know, so he's someone you can really learn a lot from. Ponte's more, you know, has a real clean kind of progress. You know, he does the rock. But, you know, he's got some stuff when he was just playing straight ahead in Paris when he was in his 20s. It's amazing.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's some great people. Zach Brock is great. You know,
sure.
There's some good people out there. But, yeah, there's not as many.
Yeah. It's not like a bunch of drummers or something.
Yeah.
All right, so you're learning how to swing. You're starting all that. Learning tunes, I would imagine, right?
Sure, yeah.
Because I can remember when we started playing at the DePaul thing, you were starting to get into learning more and more tunes, standards, things like that.
Yeah.
And figuring out your sound and all that. So then you started Conjunto shortly after that, huh?
Yeah, shortly after that. And, you know, as far as learning tunes, back in those days, we were kind of lucky because there'd be a lot of society work, you know, you know, where the violins would play at hotels and stuff. And so you go through a lot of the standard tunes, and then if you wanted to take it a step further and play harmony and learn the chords, and learn stuff on the piano or whatever, it was a chance to try that out every weekend. You know, you could say, oh, I have a goal to learn these 2 or 3 tunes this weekend. You know, learn what the chord changes are to All the Things You Are, or you know, There'll Never Be Another You, and you know, and you could like figure out at least, you know, what the blueprint was of the tune, you know, especially if you were going to play harmony, you know.
Well, and that's something that I remember because, you know, I would book like a jazz quartet or something for like a wedding, and then I remember one time or 2 times you were there, and then I think you played with us doing some jazz stuff, but you were there. I know what it was when we were at North Pond. I think we did something at North Pond where you did like the classical thing or something,
Right.
and then after the classical thing, then you came and then you played with the group and we
Right,
played
right.
jazz, and it was that kind of stuff though, because then you could learn tunes, people are listening, people are digging it, but doing that kind of stuff
Right.
regularly, you're able to really
Yeah,
kind of
you
keep
could
it consistent.
you could try something out, and if a piano player knew that you were could do it, or he would give you a course or two,
Right.
He said, okay, go ahead, and
Yeah.
nobody's listening, no.
Basically.
But I mean, people would, if you were willing to give it a shot, there'd be people that would kind of give you a chance, and then you'd say, oh, okay, yeah, I got through that time,
So how did you end up starting Conjunto then? Because you're doing the jazz stuff and everything. I mean,
right.
Then you put together that thing, and that's when you guys started playing regularly?
Yeah, so what happened, I was playing with Tom, and then I said, hey, how about if we get a conga player, and add him to the band? So he knew Roy, and then we did that, and this is a lot of fun. But we got to get a bass player that knows the tumbao,
Right.
and then that's where Jose came in, and then all of a sudden, it opened up, it started to become, more clave centric, which opened up a whole world, and then there's all the Cuban music and Cuban tradition that you could tap into.
Is there a lot of violin involved in Cuban?
Yeah, there's a style of Cuban music called charanga.
Okay.
And it basically, a charanga band had violins that would play the montunos, a flute, like that wooden kind of Cuban flute, a bass, and timbales and conga,
Okay.
And Mongo Santa Maria recorded a lot of
did?
charanga, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and that was the Cuban dance format,
Ah,
and so
okay.
Conjunto's like based off of that. That's the inspiration behind Conjunto.
What's Conjunto mean?
Conjunto just means band.
Band?
Yeah.
It just sounds cooler than band?
Yeah, combo. Yeah.
It's almost like, what's the name of your magazine? Chicago Jazz Magazine. What's the name of your band? Band. But we'll call it Conjunto so it doesn't sound like, all right.
Well, people think a lot of times people think it's something kind of exotic. Or
I thought so.
And it's funny how people pronounce it. Some people say Conjunto. Or,
of course.
A friend of mine, well, never mind. But yeah.
There's a lot of pronunciations of Conjunto, I'm sure.
Yeah, there's some Conjunto,
Of course.
I love it,
Yeah. Whatever you say, sir. Did you like it? Yes.
did
Okay,
you like
great.
it?
Thank
Yeah.
you for playing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. So you guys took off. Now you've played the Made in Chicago. You've played
Yeah.
the Chicago Jazz Festival. I know we're having you out at the Deer Park Jazz
Right.
Fest in August. Now you've got this event coming up at the Jazz Institute of Chicago, which is the birthday bash. So June 28th through the 30th is the Jazz Institute's birthday bash. It's unbelievable. Obviously, we're dropping interviews on Chicago Jazz Magazine, chicagojazz.com ahead of this. I believe most of the events are free, so which is awesome. So they can come see you for free, actually, I
Right.
believe, that night. You're going to be on June 29th at 8:30 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. in the Penthouse at the Logan Center, which is an incredible, it's on the 9th floor, incredible view, incredible scene. What are you going to have? You're going to have the full band, right?
Yeah,
7
full
pieces?
band. Yeah, it's 3 percussion. It's a lot of energy,
Hey man, we had Conjunto at Deer Park Town Center last year for the
Yeah.
Deer Park thing, and man, it was like this wall of groove just coming at people. It
I
was
mean,
like
and these guys
unbelievable.
are so good.
Oh,
I mean, they're the best. Some of the best. Jean Leroy just got back from touring with 2 years with the Gloria Stefan on your crew. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. Joe
No.
Rendon, Luis
he
Rosario.
played with Santana and everybody else.
Yeah. These guys are, and then
Why do they talk to you?
the secret is always trying to find musicians that are better than you. That's something told me once. Yeah, but they let me hang out with them. What can I say?
Nobody else plays violin.
Nobody else plays violin. Yeah, you go find a violin player.
Nobody else thought up the name Conjunto.
Yeah, that's right.
No, I mean that band, man. I mean, you guys are cooking. So, how many recordings do you have out? Do you even know?
Yeah, well, we have 2 full CDs. Live in Little Village, recorded on 26th Street,
Yep.
and Chicago Sessions, and then we've got a bunch of singles, out,
Yeah.
and some other things.
Yeah, and you guys are constantly adding tunes to the
Yeah,
repertoire.
adding
and-
tunes and arrangements,
Sure.
and, things like that, and so yeah, it's it's been a nice ride. Kevin
Yeah.
O'Connell is playing piano now, and
Yep.
and Steve Eisen's playing suit.
Yeah.
And if you haven't heard Steve Eisen play, well, you know.
I mean, well, the whole band, but that front line outside of the percussionist, the instrumentalist in that band, man. I mean, it starts to groove, and you guys start taking solos, and it's you're gonna really enjoy yourself June 29th. And the other thing
you
is
can dance too.
You have to dance
Yeah,
because
dance.
you can't sit still, man. It's just like I remember we did something at the Art Institute, and people that never dance ever were dancing, which is incredible. You can't sit still. But you're also doing something at the Museum of Contemporary Art on July 9th, which is at Jazz on the Terrace. Tuesdays on the Terrace.
Tuesdays on the Terrace, right.
So it's 5:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. That's free. That's at the Museum of Contemporary Art at 220 East Chicago Avenue. And is that going to be the full band up there as well?
That's going to be 6-piece.
Six-piece.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just 2 percussion, but yeah. Hey.
Still coming at you strong, man.
Yeah, it'll be plenty strong.
But you guys always get particularly busy in the summer, right? Because you get the festivals, you've got the outdoor thing. I mean, it's just that kind of music.
Yeah, and you know, when we can play outside, you really get we can really let it go. You know.
Sure.
I mean, time to bring the big amp, you know. And you know, it's a lot of fun.
Oh yeah. So outside of all of that, since I've got you sitting here, you also put out specifically a jazz recording without Conjunto under your own name.
Yeah, straight ahead. Yeah.
And are you doing anything that people can go and hear you play just straight ahead stuff? You and Kevin or anybody?
Yeah, we've got some stuff coming around. Playing with some singers. I just did a salon series with Leandro on piano, and we've got a date coming up at Davenport's. You know, another singer.
Yeah.
Kevin and I are going to be playing with Tim Jones. That's going to be really cool.
Because that was one of those things. You put out that recording. It got a lot of national play. I remember seeing it go banana. We put a review in Chicago Jazz Magazine, but that's completely. I shouldn't say it's completely. It's a different thing than Conjunto.
Yeah, it is.
And it's really straight ahead groove and swinging stuff.
Yeah, it's straight ahead. It's bebop and it's swinging and you know I just didn't. I wanted to do my part. You know, I want to be a complete player. You know what I'm saying? You know, I want to respect music and tradition and try to bring in some of the people I look up to, like Arturo Sandoval and some of these other great Latin players, Paquito de Rivera. You know, they're not taking any shortcuts. They're really solid. And I just felt like that's my goal too. To really do it.
Well, and it's got to be one of those things too, because I mean, going through the classical and being like a first call classical violin player.
Yeah.
You get to a certain level, and now you want all your other styles to be at that level too. Right. So it's probably just a matter of, well, that's just normal. I just have to bring up my level to all these things.
Right. Yeah, I think there's a standard that you're shooting for. You know, like concert hall. You know, you want to be in a situation where you can perform on a high level, and I really look for opportunities that I can, strive for that, and present that to people, So
for sure.
I'm excited about these things.
Yeah, the June 29th. So June 29th, James Sanders Conjunto, and that's going to be 8:30 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. All the information at jazzinchicago.org, Jazz Institute's website. Get all the info because they've got things happening the entire weekend. It's unbelievable. What's happening. They're packing it all into one weekend. So it's got to be cool that you're a part of that. And then also July 9th at the Museum of Contemporary Art, Tuesdays on the Terrace. So all the information is at mcachicago.org for that one. But more importantly, all the information about James Sanders, who is sitting right here, jamessandersviolin.com. So that's very important as well. James, thanks for coming down, making it to Johnny O's.
Thank you.
You got a lot of stuff happening this summer. And, of course, Deer Park Town Center's coming up.
Deer Park.
August 3rd.
That was a lot
of fun.
That was a lot.
It's going to be a lot of fun again, too. It's going to be a lot of fun. So, all right, we will talk again before that happens. And, of course, everyone, hopefully you get out and see James at one of these 2 gigs coming up. You're not going to regret it. Hopefully he'll see you somewhere. Hopefully I will see you somewhere. But if we don't see you somewhere soon, hopefully at some point we will see you somewhere out on the scene.